report of the 31st of August 2011. My name is Max Banfield. Today I'll be talking about the type of faintness that occurs in the chronic fatigue syndrome. In the 1980s there were reports of a new condition called the chronic fatigue syndrome. However, there's nothing new about that problem, except that the word syndrome has been added on to the end of the name. Chronic fatigue has been known about for centuries, and the cause has been reasonably understood for about a century, and it's due to a weakness of blood flow to the brain, which produces a tendency to faintness and tiredness. In order to explain how that occurs, I can compare the human body with a wine bottle. The human body contains blood vessels, which contain the blood that circulates to the feet, up again all the way to the brain, through the chest, around the arms and so forth. If you was to extract all of the blood vessels and form them into the shape of a wine bottle, you'd have a series of blood vessels in that particular shape, and you could get a general idea of how blood flows. In a healthy person, the blood flows not influenced by whether they're laying in that position or standing in that position. However, in the chronic fatigue syndrome, where the circulation can be somewhat weaker, in the laying position the blood flows to the top of the bottle, but in the standing position, as you can see, under the influence of gravity, it drops away from the top. And in the chronic fatigue syndrome, it's not quite like that. You're dealing with a closed system, but the flow of the blood to the brain is not as efficient and is weaker, and it can induce that sense of faintness when sudden changes in position are made. This was a very common problem in the 19th century when women wore tight-waisted corsets, because the compression of the blood vessels in the waist further impaired the flow of blood between the feet and the brain, and also weakened those blood vessels. And as a general example, the problem was so common because corsets were so fashionable at that time that venues of entertainment would have a fainting room included in their building, and if women were subjected to heat, or if they exerted themselves too much, or if they were hurrying too much, they would feel faint. They would go into that room or be assisted to that room where they'd unlace their corsets to relieve the pressure on their waist, and where they'd lay on a couch to take away the effect of gravity on their blood, and they'd recover within a few minutes. In the turn of the century, most women became aware that these corsets were causing a lot of health problems, including the tendency to faintness, and so corsets went out of fashion. And since then the problem of faintness has become not so common and not so obvious. Fainting rooms aren't included in buildings anymore, and it's generally been forgotten. However, the problem still occurs, to less extent, less severe, less noticeable, and it's due to a weakness of the flow of blood to the brain. The most common time that this occurs, the symptoms occurs, is first thing in the morning when the person gets up to stand up. And in general terms, of people with chronic fatigue syndrome, most of them will experience a sense of faintness, but only about a third of them will actually faint. And if you look at a period of 10 years, there's 365 days in a year, 3,650 days in 10 years, and they may only feel faint for a few of those days, perhaps 100 of those days. If there's a period of time, for example, several months, where their lifestyle has been reasonably orderly, they might not experience any problems. If there's any change in their lifestyle, they may become run down, for example. They may one day, after a period of several months of not having any problems, get out of bed the same rate, same speed, same way, and feel faint. And the way to deal with that situation is like this. The person will get out of bed, they'll feel faint, so they place their hand on the wall, and that's usually enough to stop them from falling forward. Lower their head, that gets the shoulders and the chest in rough alignment with the head. Wait a few moments, the blood gets to the brain, and then they stand up slowly and walk away slowly, so that there's no more sudden impact of gravity on their blood flow like this. So they get the head and shoulders parallel to their head, and then the blood flows to their head, and they overcome the sense of faintness. In some instances, that may not relieve the sense of faintness, so it's possible to lower the body further, place the other hand on the knee, and that will make it even easier for blood to flow to the head. Stand up slowly and walk away slowly, and that's generally all that's necessary to do for the day. Circulation has established itself, and most people with chronic fatigue now know that if they stay within their limits there won't be any more problems. There's another situation, however, where they still feel faint even though they've leaned forward like this, and there's other situation where they may feel so faint they don't even think they're going to get 2 or 3 feet to the wall. They just move back to the bed, sit on the side of the bed, place hands on each knee, lower the head so that it's parallel to the ground with the head and shoulders, in line with the head and shoulders, bend at the hips so there's no compression of the waist, wait a few moments and then stand up slowly and walk away. There's only one other situation that occurs, and it's even less common, and that's where that still doesn't resolve the problem of faintness, in which case sit up and lay back and fall back on the bed. The reason for that is because if the person does actually faint, they can fall forward and injure themselves, and that may occur if they fall awkwardly. They can injure their knees or their hips, or they may hit their head on a wall or on the corner of a cupboard, so forth. So laying back prevents that. Also, moving back to the normal position in bed with the head on a pillow is more comfortable, and wait a few moments till the circulation establishes itself, and then get out of bed slowly. In fact, in the 19th century, the women who fainted were regarded as faking it to get sympathy or some such thing, because they never actually injured themselves. However, the real reason they didn't injure themselves, from the basis of what I could determine, is this sort of faintness occurs slowly, and there's reasonable amount of time to find ways of falling in a manner that you don't hurt yourself. The situation is that once a person has managed to get out of bed and move about and exercise in a relatively mild manner, there won't be any further problems for the day. There are, however, about a dozen other situations which can bring on faintness during the day, and various ways of managing or preventing those problems, which I'll discuss in future talk. Having said that, these ideas are subject to my interest in history and in these types of problems, and as such are subject to my copyright. You're more than welcome to discuss and write about them, but please acknowledge the source of the information. Having said that, I hope you found this talk interesting and informative, and thank you for watching this video. My name is Max Bamfield, and this has been the Bamfield Report of the 31st of August 2011.